going on, guys, and welcome back. Tuesday is going to be a massive day for the game. We have a brand new patch that has been leaked. Alex and I are going to break down all of the cards that most likely we'll see change tomorrow. We're also going to be breaking down the new movement MVP, Hercules. Is this guy going to change move? Is it finally going to be great? Is it going to be trash? Should you buy him? Alex and I are going to break down all the combos and why he might be pretty damn good. Lastly, guys, we have the road ahead. Alex and I are going to break down every single item, do some speculation, and of course, talk about clans and all the excitement around what's to come to Marvel Snap. We're going to talk about that all today and more on this episode of the Snapchat. And as always, I'm joined by Mr. Alex Coccia. What a week, man. What a week. We got leaked patch notes. We got the road ahead. We got 2 cards coming at once. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing great, Cozy, and you're right. It's been a completely wild week in Marvel Snap, having multiple releases in one week. Those leaked patch notes that came literally out of nowhere. They just accidentally released them on their own website, like they self-leaking, basically, right? Yeah. And then you have I don't know, it's just been crazy. And the meta's in this really interesting place. I love it when it's like this. Tons of brewings happening right now, and that's when I have the most fun in the game. It's a great time to be a Marvel Snap player.
Second Dinner hates the idea of us getting sleep, I swear. Like, two cards, man. Like, sometimes, like, I don't know about you, but like whenever, like, I don't know, a lot comes out at once, I have to kind of judge, like, oh, what am I gonna make a video on, you know, if we get like the patch. I was thinking about it. There's gonna be months where we have 2 new cards and the balance patch hits, and I'm just like, it's gonna feel pretty cool because there's gonna be like a whole lot going on. But how's the year starting out? How's Snap starting out for you?
Starting out great. I've been having a lot of fun brewing new decks and kind of trying to be creative. One of my kind of go-tos for this season has been like, what are some cards that aren't seeing a lot of play that perhaps can lift the relevance of the new cards that came out in Kyera and in Scar? And so, like, I've been brewing some interesting stuff, and I've been having a lot of success, and I take some pride when, like, I beat players kind of climbing to infinite with decks and with moves that they're not expecting. I think that, like, when they're going for AQs, like, huh, what's this guy gonna hit me with? And I take them by surprise. It's a great feeling, and I think that when you're brewing, I think it's such a fun experience in Snap. It really is. I know that the meta is what it is, and we talk about meta decks all the time, but there's something special about brewing something wholly unique and taking it to the ladder.
Well, look, man, I'm excited to talk about it in the intro, but leaked patch notes, I mean, there's some really spicy changes to cards that there's a couple, man, that, like, they're gonna go from like worst to best, right? Like, I'm, you know, pumped to talk about those. And then also the road ahead, dude. My gosh, we've been talking about this stuff forever. Like, the first thing I thought about when I saw it was like you, and I was like, and us, and talking about this and really trying to will it into existence. But with that, that's what we're talking about over here. Alex, what are we talking about on your side of the Snapchat?
We'll be talking about Scar and giving our final rankings and some deck suggestions for you guys out there looking to make the best of the Season Pass card Scar. We're also going to be talking about Kyera, giving our final rankings on Kyera, and also discussing some of the major decks where she's finding success in currently. And then finally, as we do every single week, we'll be closing off with the Snapchat mailbag.
Well, Alex, we got the new card, man. Is it going to be a movement MVP, or is it going to be hot trash Hercules? He was in Disney, he was Greek mythology, and now he's in Marvel. Let's go ahead and break him down, man. We're going to talk about the spotlight caches. We're going to talk about where we see him fitting in overall. Let's start with just kicking it right to it, man. The spotlight cache. Now, with him, we've got Werewolf by Night. And finally, the people have been clamoring, Alex. The card that you haven't had for how long now, my friend? Howard the Duck. Dude, I'm going to be honest. Pretty bad spotlight week, especially after Werewolf took a big hit, and definitely one of those cards that just like lost popularity massively after that hit, which is funny because he's still a decent card. What are you thinking of the spotlights, bud?
This is definitely one of the weaker weeks. I have to roll because Howard's the only card I do not have in Snap. I refused to spend 6,000 tokens on him. I'm just not doing it. I'll roll my keys. But yeah, Werewolf by Night did get hit pretty negatively by the nerf. However, it was still a pretty good cog in several decks until the most recent kind of release of the new season, so everything has kind of shifted. But overall, like, Werewolf was still 100% playable. If you don't have Werewolf, it's worth getting him.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there's a lot of question marks around Hercules. That's the thing, and that's what we're discussing here. And we were a little low on Hercules last week, and I did some humming and hawing and thinking, and, well, I think we're still right. I think that, like, I'm going to stay firm on my 2-star rating here, but we had to record the last week's podcast prior to the release of the video, like the development video update, and they showcased that Hercules was actually going to impact the opposing side. which is actually a key component of his potential power. So having that clarification really does help this discussion, I think. And so I'm really interested in hearing how you still think about him.
You were like leading into it. You were like, yeah, I was doing some homing and humming. I'm like, dude, don't do it, Alex. Now, first, let's just like break down the bare basics. I guess I forgot to read the card off, right? Hercules is a 4-cost, 6-power card. The first time another card moves here, each turn, move it to another location. Now, right off the bat, let's highlight 2 different things I don't like about this, and then the things I do like. The first time, right? We just talked about that. It's brutal because you can't have multiple cards go into that, and we're starting to get decks, you have Cloak, Heimdall. There are cards that can move multiple cards, and so it's got to be kind of very methodical in the placement of these cards. But also, move to another location. This one hurt me, man. I was bummed about this. If it would have been moved to the other location, right? So if you moved a card and then it moved to the only location that it didn't originally, is involved in that equation, then you have some dependability and you know where that vulture is going to go, whatever, right? And I kind of like that. But it's been confirmed it can go back to the original location from which it moved from, right? So that kind of had me a little bit hesitant to get too excited as well. Now, 4/6, that's fine. I think that's interesting. Oh, man, here's the thing. I really actually spent a ton of time with this guy, really trying to figure out, like, can we talk about him potentially being a decent card, right? Like, is it going to be another cog for move? And I think there's kind of a larger problem at whole, and I want to get to it. I think actually some of the leaked patch notes have to do with it as well. And it's like movement for the team over there for Mr. Glenn. It's got to be one of the hardest archetypes to balance because it can be so close to being broken, which is why I think there's a lot of like restrictions on the movement cards, right? Obviously, the first time is there, on him, Spider-Man 2099, the first time something moves. And we've seen that time after time. And there's small things that I think hurt Hercules as a card overall. Yeah, dude, I'm honestly, a 2-star is where I'm landing at. And the upside, I think there are some interesting mechanics about it. I do want to break it down. I think there are some spicy things to come, especially with the leaked patch and some of the cards within that. And then also as like a control mechanism. But is it going to be enough? Now, I want to start the conversation with who he kind of reminds me of, Alex. And to be honest, man, he reminds me, and this is the problem, of Ghost Spider. And I'll tell you why, and not in as far as his viability. But I feel like between this, Doctor Strange, movement cards come out always way too high in cost. Like, if Hercules was lower cost, I'd immediately be more excited about the card. The problem is with movement, you're trying to get so many moving pieces happening. You're trying to get so many combos. And you got to get Hercules first. You have to get a card that benefits off Hercules. And then you have to get move-enable cards as well, right? So there's like a lot of things you need to even have a subpar finish. And that's what has me a little bit hesitant to get too excited about him, like kind of right off the bat, And then on top of that is like even his general use is still not too crazy. But I will say there are some really fun synergy cards and things like that. Talk to me, man. What are your first kind of initial thoughts?
My first initial thoughts is you could have added Phoenix Force to that list, right? Phoenix Force was exactly that. Overcosted, got brought down. Still not quite the meta piece that some people might expect it to be. But playable, definitely playable. So Phoenix Force is a good example of like being costed too high and having to be brought down. And you could start there. I think there's synergy with Phoenix Force potentially. The idea of like moving the Phoenix Force, either Human Torch or Multiple Man into that location, getting a benefit, then being forced to be bounced out. With Multiple Man, you probably run out of space pretty quickly, but with that Human Torch, it's going to get nice and massive, right? So there's probably a lot of benefit there. But I think you actually brought up something really interesting. The idea of like, how does this card hold out just as like, not even just as a core move piece, but like just as like a tech card, or can you use it in flooded locations? Is there like storm synergy, right? Can you storm and then Hercules and prevent visions from coming in? Actually even Jeff, but with Jeff, I'm not sure. Would Jeff still make it because nothing can stop him, or would he still bounce with Hercules? It's one of those mechanics things you'd have to test. But Phoenix Force, I think, was a really interesting idea.
I feel like this deck has become similar to like Mr. Negative, where it's a combo deck and it's already gonna win if you get said combo most of the time. Like, how much does it actually need help? Will it introduce new Phoenix Force combos? I think so, maybe. I think that could be something cool, but do you know what I mean? It kind of already wins if you get the pop-off.
Absolutely know exactly what you mean. Like if you have Phoenix Force and it's floating around at 96 power because you have your Human Torch or whatever, then yeah, like what do you need a Hercules for, right? You just need your Taskmaster. Like you need your other win condition. Usually your opponent's just like, well, I'm gone. See you later, right? So you're right. Is Hercules just that pure greed combo play that's really unnecessary in a deck that already struggles with consistency? And like if Phoenix Force is 4 and Hercules is 4, what, you're playing Phoenix Force on 4, then Hercules on 5, then bouncing into him on turn 6 and not even knowing where it lands in the end of the day, right? So it's like, yeah, it's probably potentially an unnecessary combo piece to the deck. I agree 100%.
So I don't want to go into the leaked patch notes at all, but I do want to bring up one card from it because it's important in this conversation before we dive into the synergy. So one of the cards that are going to be getting some change, finally, we've been talking about it for a long time, is going to be Kingpin. Now, Kingpin is going from a 3-4 down to a 2-3, I believe. And instead of destroying cards on turn 6, every time a card moves, it gets -2 power, if I believe in the patch notes correctly here. The reason I bring him up is I think this is a very important tool moving forward and ultimately could help out Move. And let me tell you why. Movement needs more cards like Kingpin that can hurt for moving so that you can be punished for moving. And then in turn, we can end up getting much better movement cards, right? Or we can get rid of the first time effect or things like that, right? Like Kingpin is the first card at a 2 cost that can punish somebody for moving cards. And we need more of those outside of locations, not necessarily they get destroyed, but the -2 power, things like that, right? And then they can kind of be a little bit more loose with what they can do with movement decks in total. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes perfect sense. What you said is absolutely brilliant. Essentially, you need that release valve for Move that gives Move the ability to actually kind of rise amongst the ranks a little bit so that it has some counterplay. Like if you don't have the Kingpin doing the -2 and you don't have that counterplay, then it's very hard to raise the ceiling of that archetype. Right? Just imagine what like Devil Dinosaur would feel like if Shang-Chi didn't exist, right? It's the exact same, or Blob for that matter, right? So 100%, I agree, right? By allowing Kingpin to be a legitimate tech card against Move, maybe you actually allow that ceiling to rise a little bit on Move's potential power.
Yeah, so, and that's like a big piece. I think ultimately we could get to a really cool place because time and time again, it feels like, oh, that's a cool Move card. If you're really good at Move, you can, have a success, but then they have just so many restrictions and the card draw and the way that you play it, and they're usually too high cost, that it just ends up being a deck that I would rather just play another deck. Why would I, there's other decks that do things so simply, man. Shuri. Like, why would you not just do that for more dependableness, right? But anyway, man, so Phoenix Force I thought was definitely a good idea. But looking at movement cards as a whole, first of all, dude, if we're trying to talk about the good, let's talk about where I do think Hercules could have some spice to him. I mean, dude, Vulture's going to be great here. I think Vulture's probably the biggest winner out of this, outside of one other card. People forget how fast this guy scales.
Oh, no kidding. And I mean, what you can really do is you can play Hercules on turn 4. And then what you can do is you can play Vulture into Ghost Spider, pull him into the Hercules lane, +5, boom, bounce him out, +5. That's pretty damn good. And you can Heimdall on turn 6, and then he's moving everywhere, and there's all this bounce. But again, with Hercules, you have no idea where everything's going to bounce. This is going to be complete chaos, right? But yeah, I think Vulture's a massive, massive winner here, and he's hard to Shang-Chi. He's hard to Shadow King, because if you don't have initiative, you really don't know where he's going to end up, right? So I think Vulture's really going to have some time to shine in the upcoming season.
I mean, dude, legit, just 2 plays. If you even just do the Ghost Spider play, and then let's say Heimdall, you could get him to 23 power very fast. I mean, instantaneously, right? Because he can go move, bounce, but then you have to make sure he's in the right thing. Like, that's the problem, like we just said. We don't know where he will end up. But Vulture just, like, altogether has a lot of potential. I think one of the cards, it's not to stray from Move too much, but we always kind of have to talk about it when we're talking about these new cards. It's a 4 cost, right? Zabu lacks a lot of other 4s in the movement category, right? But getting Hercules out on 3, which brings us back to the conversation of a cheaper cost Hercules, then you really can start cooking, because using 4, 5, and 6, the thing that Move has going for it is it does now have a lot of cheap movement cards. Doctor Strange, Ghost Spider, so you can theoretically start really moving things around. But it's tough because Strange moves, the highest cost card, and then you have to make sure that Vulture is higher than Hercules at 6. there's still cogs to be worked out, but I think that could ultimately be a place, if we can get Zabu out and ramp him out a bit earlier.
Absolutely, and if unless my memory fails me, I'm pretty sure that technically Werewolf by Night moves, correct? And therefore he would synergize with Zabu as well. So potentially you could see like a Craven, Hercules,
Yep.
Werewolf by Night deck, which could potentially create some value. Because I mean, Hercules and Craven should, in theory, work well together. Not necessarily in the same location, but it'd be interesting if like something gets pushed out of the Craven location to generate space, hits the Hercules, bounces back in, right? I think there's potential for Craven as well. But what's interesting is that, I mean, if you're going to try to run Craven, if they have Kingpin, well, then it's a total disaster, right? So that's where that ceiling, that kind of counterplay comes into play that what you were discussing prior.
Well, and we're getting the ceiling before we get a good move deck, right? So it's like if this were to even take off, just plug in Kingpin and kills the deck, I think, right? But on top of that, the thing I'm worried about Craven is back to that first time effect, right? Because I thought the same thing. I'm like, oh man, Craven's gonna be great here. Like, man, minimum 2-8, 2-10. You can really get this guy spiced up like the old days when we had the Jeff Nightcrawler meta. But then it's like, what do you want to play with Craven? Well, you obviously want to play Silk. But then if the opponent goes first and they move Silk and it goes to Hercules, she absorbs that first time move and then it's over. And then that's it. And you don't get to do maybe the combo that you were about to set up, right? So I love Craven. But then do you have to now take away cards that could have worked with Craven in the past because of that first time effect, you know?
I know the first time effect is actually really prevalent in Move because, like, of course, Spider-Man 2099 has it as well, right? And that's actually one of per game, not just per turn. So it is a massive limiting factor. And I wonder if their internal testing, if they try to not allow it to just be once per turn. I wonder what that looked like, honestly.
I think the problem is you would have to. Okay, so we just talked about Vulture, who, like, let's not just like scrub past this guy. Like, getting this guy even up to 13 power with one Ghost Spider, like, that's stupid. That's really stupid good. And there could be a place for this. I'm not saying that this card's done. There is an absolute world where Sarah move tech is a thing, and that's maybe something that I'll be trying with Hercules. You get Vulture down a little bit, and then you can start playing Strange for cheap. You can use Ghost Spider. But more importantly, you utilize Vulture and one other card. And I can't tell you how many times when I get back into movement, I try to make this card work because it's my favorite in the package. I think this could be the coolest thing to do late turn now, and that's got to be with Dagger. I think Dagger might benefit the most potentially from Hercules because going and getting +2 for each enemy card and having that proc twice seems stupid good. That seems like she can scale extremely fast.
It's so funny because Dagger's one of those cards in Snap that I very frequently forget exists. Like, not because I'm trying to talk smack about it. Like, I think we've established in the past this is a good card, but like it's just you never see it, right? And it is difficult to use. But dude, you're right? Like having hit Dagger bounce into the Hercules, get bounced back out, provided that they have stuff on the board. It's going to benefit 100%, and it benefits from Heimdall. It's going to benefit from anything else you're doing, whether it be with Iron Fist or Ghost Spider. And a lot of these cards, as you mentioned, have been coming down in price, right? The ability to combo with Doctor Strange, Ghost Spider, which of course got cost reduced as well, right?
Yeah.
So you're getting a lot more opportunities to do these combo-centric plays, and it's not susceptible to Killmonger. It is susceptible to something like a Shadow King, but then again, still, with every move card, it can be difficult to predict where Dagger's going to end up.
Especially because she's towards the end of the game, I think, too. Play for, like, the best case scenario. I think the problem, too, and there's probably an answer, and there's probably somebody who plays a lot of move can answer this for me. It's the way that Snap works with order of operations that I think also can hurt this. So in my perfect world, I was like, okay, Hercules could be a great left side card, right? You kind of like keeping this thing at bay that's kicking things back over. I'm like, this is awesome. But if you were to have, let's say, Dagger in the first spot in the middle and you play Heimdall, okay, and it moves Dagger, you have 3 cards, let's say, in the left location. Stick with me here. Dagger moves. I think all the other cards would try to move, and it wouldn't have Dagger move, Hercules kicker, and then the next card up moves too. I don't think that's how that would work because I think it has to finish that process, yeah?
It's so funny. In my notes, I literally have WTF mechanics ? Written down because I'm not sure how the Heimdall mechanics actually work. I've tried to research it. I believe that Heimdall will goes location by location and then does the card placement order. So like the top left card moving left will be the first one to move, I believe. But then again, like I'm not sure. Like I gotta like watch it in slow motion again to really get a firm understanding. So it's like it should be the first card that enters the location is the first card to move out of it left. No?
The problem is we don't have a lot that triggers this, right? Because in my head, I'm like, we could test it now with like maybe Fisk Tower. So like if you were to play him in a Fisk Tower and you have a card move and that dies, does the next card move? I don't think it does. I think it just kills that card that moved initially. That spot is full. But then is Hercules like an instant trigger? I don't think it's going to work that way, because if it did, then hot damn, right? Like then you could strategically set up Dagger in the middle, Vulture's next up. You move, the Heimdall, it pushes Dagger to another location. Dagger just got 16 plus power. The Vulture that you already kicked up then goes again. Then we're talking really good kind of synergistic play. And so that's why it has potential. I think Heimdall's actually, now that we're on it, I think it's just an interesting, obviously card into Hercules if you plan it out right. Heimdall's just a big statted card that can move, your final play of the game if you don't want to do some of the other, stuff with Doctor Strange and Ghost Spider and Cloak. I don't know, though. I think between Vulture and Dagger and Human Torch, with Cloak, Ghost Spider, and Doctor Strange, there's a shot that Hercules could end up having a really big power finish play somewhat more consistently. It's not going to be competitive or super competitive, but I think it still has a shot.
He definitely has a shot, but at the end of the day, what it comes right down to is how consistently can you allow this card to perform? Like the best decks out there are the ones where you can reliably perform the thing you want to perform. The decks do the thing they're designed to do, and Hercules has so many question marks around its mechanics, around the randomness of its location knock and stuff like that, that can make it a little difficult, right? I mean, it's literally the opposite of something like a Professor X. Professor X, when you ramped into Pro X with Jeff in hand and all that, you knew exactly what the result was, right? You knew you're going to lock down the location. If you undershot, you had the Jeff, you had the Blue Marvel, you had all these answers. With Hercules, you can't plan that way. Right? You just can't plan that way. And so like ultimately I wonder if it's going to be inconsistent enough to really take it down a notch, but you're right, the potential is definitely there for this to be meta impactful.
I want to see honestly an OTA that just handles all of move. If this doesn't work as well, and I think on the radar we don't have anything else for move for a little bit. Like I want to see like some spicy, let's just test it out changes, right? If it doesn't work, kill it. Let's take Heimdall to a 5 cost, 6 power. Let's try to mix things up and see if we can spice up move, because I think it's a really cool archetype with not really a home, right? It just doesn't really have all that play. If you're playing move, it's cool. I think there is a lot of big brain plays. You have some of the most agency with move, which is really interesting as well. Ultimately, though, I think Hercules being 4 cost is his biggest con, his biggest hindrance. But I'm not going to write him off. I said that whenever we talked last week on the stat chat. Don't want to write him off yet, but I would say this is that week where most of the time, like the Martyr week, if you guys can save the caches. There's some good cards coming out, man. We got Grandmaster. We got other good things. This is the week you go watch your favorite YouTuber if you want to see this card in action, but for the most part, you probably just let him sit on the bench.
Absolutely, and it's also worth noting that Grandmaster and Hercules might have some interesting synergy together, because I believe Grandmaster moves the card mid, so if Hercules is mid and Grandmaster moves it, then knocks it back out, that could be kind of interesting too, but that's a whole other conversation for another day, perhaps.
Yeah, I'll end it on this. I mean, you brought it up at the beginning, but Storm used to be played in move decks like semi every now and then, because you can get into that location that's been closed off, and you kind of have that, and yeah, I think there are people that saying you can play Hercules to follow him on her on 4, and then kick off a Vision or Jeff trying to get in there. And there's some control factor there. That's just a niche. It's not going to be used all that much, right? It's just probably not going to happen. All I know is when we talk about new move cards, I'm always like, you could do this, this, and this. And then I get into a game of Snap and I'm like, oh yeah, this is how it kind of ends up happening. I either get all my move enablers, not the cards, whatever it might be. But Hercules might underwhelm, might impress. I think Alex and I, though, are going to be low, and we're happily going to be proven wrong if that's the case. However, the good news, Alex, I think, is that on the same day, in the morning, we're going to actually be getting an updated patch, right? So we're going to have a lot of cards changing, and so you don't even have to feel like you need to get Hercules if you want Snap to be fresh. I do think it's very important, this patch, to kind of spice some things up. And lo and behold, man, we got leaks, right? We got leaks. We know to a large extent, and I would expect most of it to stay the same, what will be coming on Tuesday. Now, this is subject to change, but again, I would say the cards in here are going to be in here. I think we know that for certain, right? Every now and then there's been a small number tweak or something like that, but this is usually going to be pretty spot on. So, Alex, I mean, dude, we have a lot of cards to go through. We already talked about Kingpin. I think that's exciting. So we can kind of carry on with that. Fisk Tower now, instead of destroying a card, will give -4 power to a card, which I also think is cool. And one of the best parts about the Kingpin change is they stated that they can kind of start adjusting him more if needed. You know, he used to kill a card on turn 6. There was nothing you could do to adjust that.
Yeah, so he has more dials now, which make a lot more sense. So if they need to like tune him up a little bit, they can. They can change the numbers, change the debuff, buff him from like a power perspective, a cost perspective, whatever it is. A lot more versatility than what it once was. But I will say though, is I did like the old effect. I think that there should be a card in Marvel Snap that does kind of do the old Fist Tower thing. I think that was still kind of cool. I mean, I have highlights on my channel where it's Magneto pulling in on turn 6, Kingpin going boom, boom, boom. I like it. I like it, right? And so actually, to be honest with you, also Fist Tower, one of the locations that had one of the best animations and sounds and everything like that.
Yeah,
like very
right?
interactive, right? So I'd hate to see that like could be completely deleted from the game, and hopefully it comes back to some degree. But I agree. I think that the Kingpin change is good. Silky Smooth honestly isn't what it used to be, but still there's going to be a deck that's similar or, capable like that again. And at least we're going to have a tool for it.
Yeah, for sure. I hope like the snipers on the roof on Fist Tower still shoot, but it's like their power. Like it just like gets the power down. And I think Magneto is a huge turn swing now. Like, yeah, you can't kill him, but you can also have some really interesting things to kind of move everything over. Spider-Man now, depending on like him losing 2 power may not be as imperative as like Iron Man losing 2 power. So there are some cool things you can do there. I think that this is the beginning of, like I said, some cool things for movement. But let's get to, man, if they didn't see the patch notes, a lot of people want to know about it. Let's talk about him. Loki, guys. Loki is getting hit, but not. He is going to a 4/6, and instead of replacing your hand, he'll be transforming your hand. I think the only card that transforms at the moment is Spider Ham to Spider Pig, potentially something like that. And this is one that we just got to see in action. I'm a little bit... I just don't... Why are we giving him power? I think is the biggest... Let's talk about the ability in a second. I just don't know why we're giving him power, right? Like, Kitty Pryde had her day for so long, and they, like, notably just, like, chopped her head off because they were like, she had her time. I just don't know why we're not making him, like, a 4/3. He's White Queen with a Sarah effect at 4 cost, still.
Honestly, I think they're giving him power because I wonder if the nerf was kind of overkill as it was. Like, I honestly don't think Loki was that much of a problem. Like, in my play experience, I don't think he was that bad. And, like, I know that I might be in the minority there, but, like, yes, he was strong, but so was everything else. Like, you can get your cheeks demolished by a Shuri deck, right? Loki has counters. Loki has, like, poor matchups. But Loki also has very strong matchups too. Yes, at the top end of the ladder, it was often being played, but I think we talked about it like last week. Like I got an Infinity Border before like prior to the new season, when she now is getting hot. Before it was too hot, I was playing she not against a top 10, not top 10, top 100 Loki player, and we got the Infinity Border, and they should have been able to beat us with the Snow Guard, utilizing the ability to kind of disable the limbo with the Hawk. Like Loki has all these tools, but we still got that dub. So I am actually not all against that extra power because we don't want Loki to die. Do you really want this whole archetype just to die and disappear?
No, so I think this is where I'm excited about it, and then like what I meant. So first of all, guys, his biggest like companion, his friend, the Collector, is not going to work with him anymore, which is obviously big because it's not even just about the Collector getting, huge, but more importantly, it's about you could play him with other cards with the Collector that would then add to your hand, and you had this kind of like overall synergy going on with like Loki. And what I do like about Loki, and what I think the future of him is going to be, is playing cards early game to give you a good position late game to transform your hand and then use your opponent's cards. When you had that happening with Collector, and then you had Snow Guard, and you had these other cards that would just feed your hand, and you had a way to get good presence early game and be able to have the advantage of Loki, that's where I think some of the issue was. I think this is a good change. I do. I think that getting rid of Collector, and we think Quinjet. We think Quinjet as well, but we don't know. Either way, if it doesn't do Quinjet, I don't, yeah, like yes and no, because this will transform the way Loki decks work, I think, in the future. I think this could be the perfect change to make him competitive, but not too good, and then you can feel good about playing Loki again, right? Shuri was in the, people hated you if you played Shuri, and now it's widely accepted. Would love to see the same for Loki in the future.
No, I agree 100%. Like, I don't play Loki because I don't want people to hate the fact that I'm playing Loki, right? But I also will say that I found Collector to be one of my absolute win conditions. As someone who plays a ton of Shadow King, I liked going 8 cubes against Loki players that had high collectors, expecting those collectors to survive turn 6.
Yeah.
It was one of my favorite things to flip that location. And it's exactly what we talked about with Scar last week. The idea of playing Scar as a 4/11 into something like a Shadow King. You could beat a Loki, no problem. Throw up 11 power with Scar, take that collector down to 2/2 again with SK. It's perfect, right? So, like, it was a bit of an Achilles heel that you can attack. Overconfidence. Because SK could have been, like, Shadow King was kind of hard to defend against because Loki players aren't putting Cosmos in their decks, right? So I felt like it was an attack vector that we're now losing, but overall, it's definitely going to take the power potential out of the deck.
Yeah, we'll have to see where, like, the future of Loki goes. And I think, though, it's good for the future because then it makes other cards now not get nerfed. Like, Werewolf by Night, would he have ever gotten hit if the Loki variation existed? I don't know, right? Now, speaking of, it is kind of crazy. We see some cards where they kind of go crazy on nerfing and some not so much. I feel like this is a good sum up on Loki. Or, I'm glad they didn't get rid of the cost reduction, actually. I think that's really unique to him. However, let's talk about our next card, man. Miss Marvel. And I think the sentiment of players is like, wow, they really love Miss Marvel because they just didn't really bother to take her down too hard. Whereas I think, I don't know, I think this will be pretty cool. I will say this, I've always been big on Miss Marvel, and just the pure 415 was crazy. She is top easy 5 cards in the game. People at this point when I create a deck, it's not even a question if you should put Miss Marvel in there because she just adds typically benefit unless you're doing like a hella lockjaw kind of thing. Miss Marvel is in every deck, and I think that people don't understand this change could now limit her in every single deck, and she's still a good card. Now, essentially, all you have to do, guys, now is have 2 unique cost cards in each lane instead of 1, which ultimately really changes the control mechanism or moving a Jeff to Sanctum and getting extra 5. She's still good. She's not tamed enough in most people's eyes, but I think this will actually dramatically kind of decrease her play a little bit.
Yeah, it adds a significant amount of the restrictive effect of her play pattern, right? It greatly increases the complexity of her decks, which, I mean, is getting absolutely out of control at this point. One of the most complex cards to actually read in the game. However, what I will say is, yeah, the effect is definitely going to be much more restrictive. But I have another kind of side point to this. Like, should we just give Professor X a little bit of power back? Because, like, Professor X Miss Marvel was a major component and major reason why Professor X got nerfed. Now you just can't throw Pro X into a location and get the +5, right? You can move the Jeff in, of course, but I don't know. I'm just saying I feel like Professor X took a bit of a bullet for Miss Marvel, and now it might not be a popular take, but I'm just saying, I'm just throwing it out there.
I think he took the hit for Eliath more than he did Miss Marvel, and I feel like Thanos, where it's at already, it would just go right back to ramping Pro X. Like, they got to figure that out first, right? Before that's my and I get it, like this, but in Thanos, like he didn't want Miss Marvel. He didn't care about it. He just wanted to ramp that out, lock a location, prevent you from playing. I do get it. I think X is dead almost completely, right? So I do want to see that, conversation for another day. But Miss Marvel, they were light on her, man. They were pretty light on her overall. We'll have to see kind of where it goes in the future, maybe a PowerPoint change. But who they weren't light on is our next card, and that is Annihilus. Now, guys, Alex, I got to talk about this. So Annihilus is going from, like, if you enjoy Annihilus, if you enjoy junk decks, play it while you can. This is his last week of being extremely powerful. He's going from a 5/7 to a 5/5. I'll let you start.
Pour one out. Like, I'm actually so disappointed with this change. I actually don't like it. The only good thing about this change is that it's OTA-able. Like, if they're like, wow, we killed Annihilus a little too hard here, next couple weeks we can give him that +1 power, make him a 5/6 or something. 2 power off? Come on. Like, listen, we said it before. Annihilus was going to have a first rough launch week, and then after that, he was going to shine, and he did. when you took power off of Werewolf by Night by moving him to 4 costs, you in effect did nerf the Annihilus based shells, right? Realistically, Annihilus has only really been impacting, being played, sorry, with Sentry Hood and Annihilus itself is like the key component. Now, they are nerfing the ability for you to send over rocks, which is fine, but I don't think people were really doing that anyway. We weren't really seeing much of the debris play. But ultimately, I think that 2 power actually stings. It really stings because I think the play pattern of people playing against Sentry and realizing they have to block off that right lane, people are being much more proactive with preventing those negatively statted cards from coming over. That negative 2 power on Annihilus, you actually needed to swing locations if your Sentry's Void just got destroyed, for instance. And Sentry still being itself vulnerable to Shang-Chi. I don't want to say I hate the change, but I don't like it.
I hate it for a couple of reasons. 2 different discussions. One's the junk archetype. The other's just his stat value. Let's start with the junk archetype. It feels like they don't, and I get it to some extent because it's toxic. They don't want it to be successful, right? Like Viper's been hit. We have Annihilus getting hit. Celine obviously is not near as good as she was because of these other changes. And it's like it lasted for a month. And the problem I have with it is that there were so many junk-inspired cards over the course of the last couple months that junk players wanted to, invest in this. And then they're like, hey, no, we don't want this to be competitive. And they take it out. I think it's fine if they end up nerfing a couple of changes, if they found Viper too successful, whatever it might be. My issue is if you look at the other 5/5s, dude, or even like things around that stat line, like Claw can give you the potential of 5/10 with some power in the other lane. And then you have like Ronin. I think those are the 2 comparisons you can do. Ronin, a lot of these, you get to actively continue to push more power than Annihilus does. Because best case scenario in perfect world Annihilus, perfect world, where your opponent can also play cards and defend and these other things. That's besides the point. You're getting Hood out, Sentry, and then you play Annihilus. So you have a 18 power swing now would be the ultimate if everything goes right. I just feel like it's lackluster. It just feels off. It feels like an off change for that reason and for how much he costs and what you're actually able to do. If they did this in tandem with another negative card release where it's like, okay, that maybe would have pushed them over the limit, I guess it makes sense. It just doesn't settle right for me, the junk archetype. I want every archetype to have its place in competition, and it feels like they're directly now multiple weeks going after that.
I was just surprised because I didn't feel like junk was a problem. I didn't feel like Annihilus was a problem. Like on numbers, maybe it might have been overperforming slightly, but I don't think anyone was complaining to me about Annihilus. I wasn't getting YouTube comments like, yo, F Annihilus. I was not seeing any of that.
No.
I was getting the Loki comments, right? I was getting those. I wasn't getting Annihilus. So when I saw the change, it honestly took me by surprise because I don't think it needed it. And you're right. It's like, I feel for the free-to-play players too that actually invest in this card, because you and I were really high on the card going into the season. Celine coming in as well to kind of really amp up the potential of Annihilus-based decks. And then one by one, these cards got knocked off their pedestals of power to the point where Celine's coming out and it's like, you killed everything around the card, right? So the best Annihilus decks don't even run Celine. They're still trying to run Werewolf by Night, which you've already nerfed. So it's like, it just felt bad. And I mean, again, it is OTable to fix it. I feel bad and it sucks. I think Annihilus was a really, really good card for Marvel Snap, a really interesting flavor piece that really defined a new archetype and playstyle for people to not only play, but play against.
Maybe data-wise, they saw too much Sentry into Annihilus, and then you could put that combo in any deck. Like maybe, and that's kind of what was happening, a very small bit, right? But like top-end players, maybe they have stats there that they didn't like, and then, whatever. But even if, you still have to have the right combinations. I'm not crazy about it. Hopefully we see change there. Alex, we have quickly, we'll just celebrate a quick hurrah. Angel did finally get an adjustment. Instead of just flying out from your deck, he can also fly out from the hands. Listen, bro, like I think Angel maybe will be played like an ounce bigger. I can barely even find the card. He'll be played like maybe ever so slightly more. But I think the conversation I want to have around this is this starting card protection conversation. Dude, I can't find Angel to save my life. Help me, Alex. Where the hell is Angel?
You keep changing the sorting. I can't find it either.
I can't find it. He's gone. Maybe they just deleted him from the game. I'll go to destroy to even find the card. And here he is. I feel like I just don't care about this whole protecting the starting cards thing. I don't know how. I'm not saying there's not new players coming to the game. I think we're getting plenty of new players coming to Snap. but I don't know. I feel like it's just kind of dumb, and I want to see more from Angel.
Why, like, come on now. We're protecting it, like with Punisher, for instance. There were other cards too that were like Elektra hasn't been changed because of it. Like, there's a couple major components of it. I think there was one other card that recently got changed where like the new player experience was it was Uatu.
Uatu,
It was Uatu, right? That seemed like it couldn't get changed because of the new player experience, for instance. So I agree 100%. Of course, we are getting new players in the game. Our statistics show that. But I'll say that like Angel at least is better now, but I think he still probably sucks. He does represent a deck thinning opportunity because like with Chavez gone, this is one of the only ones left, but still it's gonna have the M'Baku effect. It's always gonna be in your hand.
The thing is too, like I just feel like we're buffing other cards via OTA. That's what helps the new player experience, right? Like Wolverine sucked, and that really helps it now. And so it's like, there's a reason why they're doing what they're doing. And maybe I'm way off track. Maybe I'm way off beat. Please let us know in the comment section what you agree with there. Dracula has been changed ever so slightly. Kinda. Listen, Chavez getting nerfed, which speaking of player experience, but Chavez getting nerfed, we saw the death of discard in more ways than one. Dracula now, instead of just gaining a power, so he used to, if it was -1 or if he had +2 from Wakanda Embassy, he would just take the card that he discards power. Now he'll be adding it to himself.
I mean, it's an interesting change that's going to need some experimentation. I used to love throwing Dracula into like a Jotunheim and just letting him tick down, right? And then letting him just pop back up. That was always cool. But realistically, like it wasn't so long ago that there were collector swarm decks with like Nakia and Okoye that were underperforming, admittedly, but they were discard decks that kind of tried to do the thing. You could even have like a Wong Gambit type play where like you're just trying to like machine gun while generating these swarms and collector stuff. Like I think that there's a world where this Dracula change actually makes sense. However, with the changes to Chavez, traditional discard is dead, and you're seeing the emergence now of Black Knight. And I think that Dracula is going to need a little more than this in terms of support to make up for what was removed in Chavez. Because quite frankly, I don't know about you, I'm not playing Dracula-based discard decks. I'm playing Black Knight all day long.
Yeah, so you mentioned Jotunheim. There it is, guys. There it is. Maybe if he got Celine, there's the other one. But that is it. Like, people like to think of the one use case where they have this big... And go look at my videos. I've had some great Jotunheim wins with Dracula. This is why it's good. Okay, first of all, there's way more locations that give power than reduce it. So right off the bat, you can do Quantum Tunnel, or whatever that one is, where it's like +2 to the base power. You can do Wakanda Embassy. Those are just off the top of the head. I don't know other ones. But he gets to keep that power now. But the other thing I like is, I love that you can boost him now a little bit, right? So let's say that you have like decent cards in your hand, maybe 8, 7 power. You can now like forge them, right? And give him that little bit of extra boost. And then Dracula's biggest redeeming quality by far is that nothing happens to the end of the game. They don't know what's going to happen in that lane. They don't know how much power is going to happen. But now you have a way to kind of boost that a little bit. I think this is great. I do think, not now, but I think this will be ultimately good for the future of Dracula.
It's fair. And I guess we'll have to just deck build around it. And perhaps this change comes now, it underwhelms, and then like in April or March or something, we get a discard card. We're actually getting discard cards coming up, like Meek and others, right?
Yep.
So there are some things being synergistic with discard that are coming, and maybe suddenly it'll make sense when a new piece comes out announced that will re-enable the Dracula-based archetype.
Well, buddy, let's go ahead and wrap it up with the last card, and this is the biggest change in my book by a large margin. Quake, guys, is staying as a 2/3, who I already think is just a good, fun card to use from time to time. Nobody plays her, but, she's fun. Alex, how long have we been talking about this change? What if you could predict the locations that swap? Quake now no longer has to be played in the middle. She can be played wherever, and the other 2 locations swap places. This is now, in my opinion, the most plug-and-playable and damn near the best. I'm gonna say it. 2-drop in the game. I think this is great.
That is a hot take. You're saying Quake is better than Jeff Aruni?
One of them. I said I think she's a top 5 2 cost in the game. No
Lawyer
question.
Cozy coming out
Top
with
3.
the qualifying statements.
Top three. I'll go top 3. You don't think so, dude? There's a cheaper Legion.
No. Listen, are you not remembering that one of the most epic plays ever in Twitch history was me quaking you? right?
Got you.
Conquerors or whatever it was,
Oh,
right?
yeah,
Or,
yeah, yeah.
but it was during one of the Twitch drops, right? You ultimately won because I played Gladiator, and that's a whole that's emotional damage for another day. But what I'll say is that Quake has been a card that I've always loved to splash in my decks. And when I was reading the patch notes at first, I got excited. I didn't even realize at first glance that you don't even need to play her in the middle anymore.
No,
I'm
she's
so
busted.
used to having to play her in the middle
She's
that
so
like
good.
when I did, I'm like, whoa, hold on. This changes everything.
This is so good. This is everything we wanted and more on Quake. And people don't realize that people always underestimate locations over and over again. I'm a little worried about Legion. I think this really hurts Legion because why play a 5-drop? I get that it's all the same location and there's some wacky things you can do. When you can disrupt, which is the biggest thing you want to do with Legion, for 2, and now you can even have more synergy with things like Storm and then flood a location, and then you actually like build up another location. You just completely remove Onslaught Citadel, the Nexus. This is going to be in almost all of my kind of flex value decks. No question about it. Maybe I'm overhyping it, but I think this is the biggest change by far.
No, you're not overhyping it at all. Like, think about what happens to Storm. Like, you got this flooded location. It's like, nope, now this location's flooded,
Yeah.
bro. Good luck getting in here. And then they play their own Quake and they flood it back to the other side.
Yep.
But, like, it's kind of crazy. And locations are one of those things in Marvel Snap that we often don't pay a lot of attention to. We often talk about, oh, this meta deck and this deck and these cards. But locations play such a massive role,
Yep.
right? Like, you saw it, like, you see it in many competitive arenas of play. Like, there's often games that are won and lost, championships that are won and lost based on location RNG, favoring one deck versus the other. Choosing when to snap and retreat based on locations is a thing that you have to learn to be successful in this game. Like 100% Cozy, I'm not thinking that you're overshooting it. I can't wait to get my hands on the new Quake.
You say RNG too. This also removes more RNG in Snap, which I think is ultimately good, right? Like you can now have more calculated decisions. Love to see that. Also, I think it's kind of cool to say, I wanted to state this. I think this is awesome. You now have counterplay. If you have priority, you now have counter. I love this. You have counterplay to having the turn 7 greedy deck. So let's say you play Magic, you have Limbo out, it's turn 6, and you know they got the Reality Stone. You know what they're about to do to get rid of it. Now, Legion won't work, you know, but like the Reality Stone, some of the other methods, Scarlet Witch, you can play Quake and quickly swap the Limbo, and that opponent's screwed because they were totally depending on shutting your plan down, right? That is just one instance, as well as the flooding one, where I think we have a lot of cool capabilities with Quake. Sign me up.
And there's a lot of other decks as well, like Silver Surfer, which like you have like Crimson Cosmos and areas where like you can't play cards. Well, now you just play cards, you play your Brood into a location, you play Quake, you swap them, and then you're like, okay, perfect. Now I can keep playing my cards, right? So some of the more restrictive locations for like zoo decks where you can't play into certain spots, and again, as I said, Silver Surfer, suddenly you have these options with Quake to fill the location as best you can. And like Sanctorum, for instance, Sanctorum, you just play your stuff, Quake it out, you're filled over there. Play more cards. I think it really is a fascinating new mechanic in Snap. I just hope that they don't turn it into like a 2-0 because it's too good.
Dude, they might, though. They might, I don't even know, or they make her a 3 cost or whatever, because it's like, to your point exactly, the amount of locations that, like, let's even take Big House, for example. Like, you can now sneak in cards back into that location where that opponent was playing cheap cards the whole time. I would damn near say half the locations, if not more, have an advantage to swapping them if you know you're going to swap it, right? The only thing I'm worried about is now Quake is going to be everywhere. So they're playing Quake. I'm playing Quake. Locations are going all over the place. I love the chaos. Sign me up for it, man. But we're on our last subject here. That's going to be it for the league patch notes. We'll see if they come true, and that'll come out tomorrow, 8 a.m. So it'll be very quick. Let's talk about the road ahead. Now, we'll be somewhat quick through these, but we do have a lot of things to discuss. First and foremost, albums are going to be getting a little bit of an upgrade. I think we can both say we're excited to see that not just be a monetization feature, but also something that we can actively, start aggressively obtaining. Big W, yeah.
Oh, 100%. I was really disappointed with the original implementation of the albums. To see them improving on them so quickly really does, like, give me confidence that they're going to be something worthwhile in the future. Because, listen, in theory, I mean, Marvel Snap is not only a great game to play, but it's also fun from a collection standpoint. I love the collection element of the game. And so when the albums underwhelmed, I was a little disappointed. But yeah, this is great. It's great news to see that they're putting some legitimate development time into making them better.
And then we have changeable card borders. Now, I think this is like, this is great. I think people are crapping on this a little bit because of like the limitations of it. I'm fine. I'm happy with it. Great example is if I go over to to this Carnage here. I have not upgraded this Carnage variant one time because why would I? It's a red border on the red card. Looks fantastic. But now you're going to be able to upgrade this. I can split for gold or whatever I want, and then also I can go back to this border. You can have selectable borders. I think this is definitely something we've been asked for a long time.
You know what? I know that this might not be a popular take, but I actually agree with their sentiment that, not making so that you can pick each individual particle effect and mix matching them exactly the way you want is beneficial, because you're still going to want that excitement of re-splitting cards. I think that unlocking specific combinations and be able to apply those to the cards is important. But like, oh, I got Kirby Crackle Gold on this card, I get to just apply Kirby Crackle Gold into any version I want. I think that would have been a little bit of a miss, because listen, I want to play this game for the next decade. I want to keep unlocking new variations of splits that'll get me excited every time I hit that button.
And like, I get it in a perfect world, like, yeah, sure, but also they can't do that to the past player base. Like, I know for one, I had to do like 10 splits on my favorite Jane Thor variant. Dude, people would be up, they'd be losing it because they really wanted X, God split or whatever they call it. I do think it's, definitely a step in the right direction here. And more importantly, the coding's going to be there so they can add, more to this in the future, which I think is overall exciting. We have events, and the first event we have coming up is called the League. This to me is awesome. I do have some concerns, but I think overall it's stupid cool. The League is the first one. They're going to pair you up with other players of skill level, and then you guys compete overall for something, right? So the pros, new way to get something, whether that's gold or credits, economy, anything like that, just like Conquest, that's a win big time. Things I'm worried about is how long is it going to last? Is it a grind fest? What's the matchups look like? All that kind of stuff you can worry about. But I think this is something really cool, especially to add to lackluster days like maybe the weekend.
Yeah, and we talk about the new player experience. We're going to have new player matchmaking in that mode, right? Where similar collection levels, similar skill levels, they'll be playing against people of similar collections. So it'll be a very nice experience for them to help them get the materials and the resources they need to improve their collection. So yeah, I'm excited, but again, like you, I was a little, I had some reservations about the potential grindiness of something along those edges, but we'll see how it comes out.
Yeah, I have to hold my, I could sit here and just, inspire, like, well, what if it's this? What if it's this? Like, if it's 24 hours, yeah, whoever plays the most is probably going to win that. Or is there a cap? Is there amount of time? Is it a different queue than Ladder and Conquest? Probably not. But then if you only get 5 queues, then probably yes. And then it solves all the problems. And then you also have to have the time zones for the world and all that. You know what I mean? So I think they'll do it right. Either way, I think events have been something we've been wanting better than those early, like, garbage web-based, like, 2001 Nickelodeon website game things we were getting. This is definitely much better. Card Mastery was at the top of my most requested things in an early Snapchat. I don't know if you remember this. I brought up Overwatch and Smite, how you would know immediately if somebody played X Hero because they had golden weapons or golden hero or whatever. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled for this, man. Now, I think the rewards could get cooler over time, but the little reaction emojis are going to now be, you can get Deadpool reactions, whatever it might be. And they gave an example of get 10 games where Deadpool gets 100 power. Yo, I love the idea content-wise, too, to, like, chase these and go after these. It's such a fun concept.
I do. I really like the concept as well. And it looks like it took a lot of development effort, like to do that with every single card. Like, it's a lot of work. And so I'm really excited for that implementation. And you're right. In other games, it's really fun. Like, I remember when I used to play Dota 2, like in the heroes that I would play the most often, like I'd have like gold decked out, like items and stuff. So on that opening splash screen, like I'm intimidating my opponent with this beautiful art that I have unlocked. And you'd only ever unlocked if I played way too much of the damn game and that specific hero. So when I see your arrow coming out there with like a shimmering cape flapping in the wind, moving my card into the kingpin location for a sweet -2, I'm gonna know it was Cozy Snap because it just looks too damn good. I'm actually really excited for it, to be honest with you.
So what I want them to add, and I hope they add, and I get it, they have to be delicate because of the variant split system that they have now. But let's take Smite, for example. I haven't played this game forever, but dude, you had to dump in months of time into it. Like, you really had to zone in on one archetype. I think if they make it hard enough, I think they make it very hard to obtain, okay? But let's say there's like 20 Deadpool things that you have to get done. And some of them are like play 1,000 games. I don't even know, right? You are a Deadpool player. What if instead of just a golden back, the entire card is golden? So like Deadpool's character, everything. The whole thing's a golden card, right? And then it's just like, instead of an emote, it's this symbol of a card that you have too. like, I'm a Deadpool player. You know what I mean? I think that could go even further. I'd be excited to see it.
I mean, the options are endless. Like you have a border that's like on
Yeah,
fire or something like that, kind of
exactly.
like NBA Jam. He's on fire, right? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
It's like
yeah.
there's so many ways you can take it, but like I agree 100%. I guess this is basically what the prestige system was supposed to be, or is that supposed to
Yeah,
be
I think
different?
so. I think that's what this is supposed to be, and it kind of evolved into it, but maybe not. I can't read into it too much. But I also like was looking back at what they said about it, and it's kind of lining up with it overall. I hope that it's retroactive. If it's split based, it has to be like split Deadpool 50 times. But then it's not retroactive for the stuff like it's not going to be. There's no way they can track if I had Deadpool at 100 power in some of my old games. I don't think that's going to happen. And that's good because then we could chase things and that's kind of fun. But if it's split based, that has to be retroactive, is my one caveat.
No, I agree 100%. The one thing that was missing from the roadmap, I just want to quickly bring up before we call it, was that I'm really hoping for a spectator mode because I think that the competitive scene in Marvel Snap could really use it. It's not to say that with this competitive scene doesn't obviously work. I think it's one of the best competitive games out there. Like it's literally the synchronous turns, how fast the games are, the cube mechanics. Like it's all so intense when you watch it. I just think a spectator client should have been on the list somewhere to really help the tournament organizers and just the overall competitive scene.
What's cool though is like people often forget like these change often, these road ahead maps, and the first two columns are the most important. And I think things kind of ebb and flow. It took a year for smart decks, but then we got things sooner that were on the further whatever or coming soon, whatever. Now last ones I want to mention. Okay, so we've got booster VATs, so you can target cards to booster. Probably going to be a way they monetize this a little bit, but I also think it's like. It's nice to be able to do it if you want to really, zone in on Deadpool or whatever that might be. Depending how easy it is, I think that's just like an overall win. I hope they don't spend too much development time on it, but I think it's, definitely a cool thing to have. But dude, let's talk about clans. Dude, I can't wait to tell you my clan name. You ready? I've been thinking about it.
I'm ready.
I was thinking Elephant Haters or Costco Employee of the Months. What do you think?
I love both of them.
I know. You want to be in it?
They fit you perfectly. I mean, I could not have picked a better, better clan name for you, Cozy. It works perfectly.
Last Christmas, best song, #1 hit. Listen, all I know is if year 2, and this is why I wasn't like too disappointed to see new game mode a little further out. If year 2 is full social based, I'm pumped. I think that is awesome. I think there are some things that people are scared about that come from other games that have clans. Snap is a very casual game in terms of commitment wise. Clans can make things a little dicey. You're going on vacation. You're not helping us get X, games in to be able to get. There are games that have done it right. And if they do it right, this is going to be absolutely huge.
I think it has to be one of those things where everyone in the clan just wins. Like I think I know this is totally random, but Destiny I think did a good job of it where like you contribute to clan's progress and you just, even if like you were off that week and your clan did some good stuff, you got some rewards, but you get more rewards if you're contributing yourself and stuff like that. You're right. I think that like the social elements of games can be some of their best parts, but for some people can be some of the worst parts too. Right. And I always bring it back to what my World of Warcraft experience was also long ago. What kept me playing that game wasn't the grind of hitting mobs, but it was the social side, the guilds, the raiding together, having a role to play in a party and getting it done. I was a healer. I healed everyone. It was beautiful, right? No one died under my watch, never. But that's not true. A lot of tanks died. I apologize to every tank who died under my watch. But at the end of the day, I think that the social elements of these games can be really impactful for positive.
And on that, if it's 50 people in a clan, just make it where like if 30 of them play that week, then you get the rewards. Like don't base it off 50, base it off like 30, and then you can have a healthy amount of like people pinging and things like that. If they get this right, this is going to be huge. Because where I think this goes, and I'll kind of take it to the last subjects here, where I think it goes, first, clan competitions, hell yeah, that'll be awesome. But more so is I feel like, I know we want draft mode the most. Like the most. I feel like it could give a roadmap to game modes. Now, hear me out. I think you launch draft mode first, okay? Because I've been wanting 2v2. And if they do clans and social right, then they can do this social game mode 2v2. Only problem is, how do you do this? Do you like both bring a deck and then you can play cards the same in one location and then you have your own locations? That's one way. But if they just add to the drafting league or whatever drafts are, and then you draft as a 2v2, it solves that problem. And then it's like this really unique game mode. So whatever they might do, I think we could have that for another discussion another time, new game modes that we want. But dude, I'm pumped. I expect it probably like start of summer if I were to take a guess.
You know what? At the end of the day, what really gave me confidence about this roadmap was that when you look in retrospective, they've actually executed on a lot of what they've promised. And outside of albums, they have not really whiffed. Smart decks, I think, are a very useful tool. I was talking to a couple of pretty casual players over the break here because I have some friends that play casually, and they're like, "No, we like it, man. Like, don't always have the time to watch your videos because they're too long and there's too many of them or whatever." So they just, I hit the auto deck button, it gives me a deck. I'm like, whoa, cool, that's an Agatha Kang deck. That's going to be great. Good job. Get out there, right, buddy? But at the end of the day, it's actually a really useful tool for a lot of players, even if at first glance it didn't seem like it was going to be that impactful. So when I look at the track record of quality improvements we've gotten to Marvel Snap, I'm actually really excited for the future.
The only thing I was sad about is that there's so, dude, there's been games in the past that took so long to develop. By the time they finally came, they were so overhyped that they failed, right? Like, it just didn't do well. Ultimate variants have now been pushed. Dude, I thought for sure Ultimate variants were going to be one of the first 2 columns because it's been talked about forever. It's in the last album. Dude, I don't know. Is my car going to explode? Am I going to have Robert Downey Jr. like talking to me on the phone when I play Iron Man? Like that's my expectation at this point. We'll have to see if I had to guess, they're going to do something unique for every card with like custom everything like we got with the emotes, you know, because God knows how long it took to commission how many, you know, emotes for every card. I was cracking up though. That was at the last section.
There's a key thing though. You said ultimate variants. We're actually talking about mythic variants, which now in the language has changed back into ultimate variants. So it looks like the mythic variants and the ultimate variants have been slammed together into one thing.
Yeah, which I think is good. We don't need like another subset rarity or whatever when ultimate's already bad. Dude, lots to go through, a lot to be excited about. Maybe in the future we can talk about game modes in more detail. They have new card mechanics on there as well, whatever the heck, you know, I think that's, you know, always interesting. But I love it. Road ahead maps are awesome for Snap. We got a lot of news in 1 week. And overall, guys, a lot to break down here on the Snapchat. Now, we're going to break down this week, Scar and Kyera, our first week with 2 new cards in, as long as I can remember. We're going to be talking about that over on Alex's side, our thoughts, and if you should get them on the last day to be able to. We'll see you over on Alex's channel. And until the next one, happy snapping.